Welcome to the Powerful Podcast, where you will learn the marketing, strategies, and beliefs to grow your dream business. Totally possible, and I'm so excited to share this with you. I'm Almira Bardai, and I grew and scaled my own business from zero to multi-millions and sold the business. And now I'm here to teach you exactly how to grow and scale your business from 6 to 7 figures and more with ease, simplicity, joy, and fun with, of course, strategy, mindset, and marketing to take you to that next level. Welcome back to the Powerful Podcast. This one is a very special episode. And, there's so much talk about the nervous system and somatics and expansion. And I think just as much as we talk about it, there's as much confusion or lack of clarity as we're seeing it. So we're sitting down with Sonja Harvey, who is, funny enough, an old friend who's come back into my life, as they always do, as even more magnificent women than when we previously met. And I mean, you're going to see this on YouTube, but Sonja just glows. There's a light, and you will learn the secrets of, Sonja has always had that beautiful light, like candlelight light in her ever since I've met her. And she'll talk more about her story and where she's at with expansion and the practices that she has. So let me first introduce her, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Sonja to lead us through about expansion, somatics, nervous system. Sonja Harvey is a NeuroWise leadership coach and creator of the Expansion Practice, a coaching and consulting practice for mission-driven leaders. Her work reflects the integration and evolution of her 2+ decades of work in leadership, the challenges she encountered by not listening to her intuition, and how they led her to the study of the nervous system and spiritual direction post-grad work. The focus of her work today is to help leaders understand their nervous system and deepen their relationship with their intuition, to expand their capacity to live and lead in a sustainable, transformative way. Well, welcome, Sonja. Tell us all about your practice, so how you got there. Over to you. Enlighten us and share with us.
Well, thank you so much, Almira, for having me. So my story goes back a few years, let's say we'll go back about 10 years or so. And I was working in management consulting for a long time, over a decade. And I was in the dream job. I was working really hard to achieve more, to keep producing, doing all the things, never saying no. I just really wanted to take on more. I was in that phase of my life. And through that process, probably about 6 or 7 years into that, I had been traveling across the country. I was starting to really burn out, and my body had been giving me signs. My health was giving me signs for a good 2 years before I really actually did burn out quite epically. And the whole way along, I had been ignoring the signals in my body. I had been ignoring my intuition. I had been ignoring really everything that was telling me to slow down. And when I look back on that time in my life, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I'm sure people in your audience have. It's like we literally don't know how to slow down because we're so caught up in hustle culture. We're so caught up in the doing. And it's like we forget that that's not our actual normal rhythm, that our nervous system needs actually something very different. And so one thing led to another, but there was a period of time where things were really demonstrably wrong with my health. My hair started falling out. I was having rashes that would show up on my body, and then they would finally go away only for something else to show up. It was like whack-a-mole style, okay, I get this figured out, and then that shows up. And I was sitting in a boardroom with our team in Vancouver. This was close to the end of the year, so it was close to Christmas. And I was sitting there and we were finishing up this meeting, and I started to have this experience of pain down my jaw, through my neck, down my shoulder of one arm, and then it just stayed in my arm like a vice grip. And so I'm breaking out into a cold sweat, trying to breathe through the pain. And there's this moment where I'm like, am I having a heart attack?
Yeah.
As I'm sitting in this meeting. And I was so disconnected from what was happening in my body. And I didn't want to draw attention to myself. Typical, right? I'm leading this meeting, didn't want to draw attention, wanted it to finish. So I just sat in the meeting trying to breathe through this pain for the next 40 minutes. I got up and left. There was a clinic across the street. I walked in, talked to a doctor, and he's like, you need to go to emergency right now. And I'm like, I'm all meek and like trying to like backtrack what I was saying. I'm like, I'm actually feeling quite a bit better. I think I was just hungry. I actually said that. I was like, I think I was just hungry and I'm really tired. It's right before the holiday season. I just need some sleep. He's like, Sonja, I need you to go to emergency right now. Number one, heart attacks show up differently in women. Number two, there's an enzyme that actually is secreted in your bloodstream, and it's in there for maybe 24 hours, if I remember correctly, that they can find if they do blood work right away, and then they can say, okay, yes, this has actually happened. So he's like, at the very least, I need you to walk down the street with this requisition to get blood work taken. So I'm like, I can do that. I can walk down the street and get blood work taken. The whole time I'm like, this isn't happening. This isn't happening, right? All of it.
Yeah.
So really working hard.
It's how we roll, right?
Totally. I'm like, I'm just having a bad week and I'm exhausted. So I walked down the street to go to get my blood work done. And this clinic happened to be closed because it was their Christmas luncheon or something like that. Like it was something, they were closed for the holidays. Something was happening. And so I went back to work. So fast forward a couple of days, it still takes me some time to tell my husband about this. Fast forward a few more days, it's maybe a week later, I finally call my doctor. And it was not a proud moment, but a huge wake-up call for me. And long story short, we were not able to conclusively say it was a heart attack or not. It was mild regardless. So I was very fortunate. We did all the testing, no damage to my heart. But there were a number of things. There was like 4 times the amount of cortisol, which is a stress hormone in my bloodstream or in my system, than is normal. And they test that first thing in the morning when you're supposed to be your most relaxed. And they test it over time. And there was just a number of things where my doctor was like, I really advise you to leave your job if you can. If you can do that, you need months off, like you need a break. And there were a number of other things with my health that had been also trying to get my attention. So I was like faced with this, wow, I've been going 100 miles an hour for 7-8 years in this particular role, to stopping completely, to not being able to do all the things that I was doing to offload my stress, which was I was running a ton. I was doing high intensity workouts, really pushing myself just as hard in my workouts as I was in my work. And all of those things were actually doing the exact opposite of what I thought they were. They were bombarding me with more cortisol, more adrenaline into my system. And cortisol is also one of the hormones that causes heart attacks, right? So I'm doing all the things I shouldn't be doing, plus drinking a pot of coffee a day, all of it. So it was like a screeching halt and realizing like, wow. So I was really lucky. I ended up resigning from my role and transitioning out over a number of months and I didn't know at the time it was going to be a year, but I had a year off where I wasn't working. And I was really trying to heal and figure out like what went wrong. How did I not notice these signals, right? I'm an intelligent woman. I love health and all the things, and I'm doing all the reading and the research. And yet it didn't work for me. I was not able to unhook myself from hustle culture. So that took me into this deep dive into somatics, into nervous system work, and really trying to understand as well. I'd always been an intuitive person, but there were so many things that I had ignored, and trying to understand like what was going on for me there. What was the block that I wasn't really listening to my inner voice or my deeper wisdom or whatever language works for you around that. And so here we are. Now today, the expansion practice, which is my business, is I do a lot of coaching work with women who are in a very similar position where they're on the verge of burnout or they're burning out, but they still feel like they have all of this impact, this legacy they want to leave. They want more meaning in their work and in their life. And so it's like, how do we find this way to balance and in a really sustainable way, continue to make an impact, continue to do these great things, follow the vision we have for our leadership or our life without continuing to burn out and be spread so thin that we come to a place of really, it's like, how would I unpack burnout? You could either be like I was for a really long period of time, just not having any emotion or feeling or totally in that place of apathy for a long time, moving into depression and anxiety, right? Really getting worried, like the Monday morning blues, the Sunday night, like, crap, I got to go to work tomorrow, and feeling that dread, right? All of those experiences are very real for a lot of us who work hard, and especially for my friends and sisters and what have you who have kids on top of that, and they're carrying an extra load. It is something that is so common, but everything in our life is about like instant, do it now. Our phones are conditioning us, right? As well as all the other technology we're using, that it needs to happen right away. We get an email, we feel like we need to respond. Our nervous system is primed, right, to see these things literally as threats. So how do we combat the threat? We respond to it. And it's starting to like help my clients and myself back then unhook from that conditioning, unhook from that habitual pattern. And for me in particular, and a lot of the female leaders I work with who get very stuck in our head, and we don't actually feel what we're feeling a lot of the time. We end up staying stuck in our head and we continue to think about it. We ruminate on it and it just loops for us. And that overthinking habitual pattern keeps us from getting into our body and actually experiencing what is going on for us. And I know you and I recently had a breakthrough session together so that I could give you an example of the type of work that I do with my clients. And I don't know if you want to speak to that at all in terms of that sort of mechanism for coming out of our head and dropping into the body and how powerful that can be.
There's so much, because it's almost, when I'm doing my nervous system work, it's like I step outside of my body and I've depersonalized or perhaps personified my own nervous system. So I could look at it from, is that an objective perspective? Yeah, it's almost like a skeleton out of my body, putting it in front of me and be like, there's the nervous system. I'm seeing what I'm doing. And the overthinking and trying to understand. And I think because I've been overthinking it, I'm trying to understand, okay, what is causing this sensation in my body? Or I'm feeling a catch in my throat. What do I think it is? And I've been trying to mentally explain it and understand it, which I'd said to you when we did our session yesterday, is that I'm a mental processor. But again, because I'm trying to process it through my mind, I'm not actually allowing whatever emotion energy is happening in the body to be able to close itself, because it needs to be done in the body. But we are so disconnected from the mind, and the body are so disconnected, and particularly as women through patriarchal systems, we have been disconnected from mind, body, and also from our feelings. We don't even know what they are anymore. And I speak for myself that I didn't know how to actually process an emotion or a sensation. And I think our session yesterday was both understanding how to do that, or what it is I need, because again, you hear so much about somatics and the nervous system, embodiment, but they become buzzwords without an explanation. And for me, it brought clarity, because I mean, my brain, it's funny, I've never realized I was so scientifically driven. I need to know the answer. And I never realized why, but I think we just all have a natural skepticism. But it gave me a language or a framework of being able to do the work. But it also just simply got me out of my head and into my body. And it let go of so much energy. And I said to Sonja, is because my shoulders went up. And so she was asking me, what am I feeling? And my shoulders went up to my ears. And she just asked me to hold that, and holding it for 90 seconds to 3 minutes, but just hold the position that my body wanted to be in. And then I just held it and then let go. And it was literally my body took a relief, and just let go of so much. And funny enough, what happened was that because I was carrying so much energy and effort from a past relationship, that actually when that person ended up coming over to my house that evening, to just hang out with our son, it was literally like a peaceful family. And it was so wild, because all the work that you and I did, just, what they say is that whatever you do it in the horizontal shows up in the vertical, or vice versa. But it literally is whatever you do in the energetic is what actually changes in the 3D. And so not only was it a letting go of, well, first of all, understanding what's happening in my body and getting into there. Second of all, was just letting go of what I've been carrying, but then literally a miracle happened. And so in the full spectrum of the whole experience, it was wild. Wild.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to say, it's the law of correspondence. It's as within, so without. So when you change something from within and genuinely change it, right? Not from a mental place, but from a somatic or a nervous system perspective, it does shift your external world. And that is such a beautiful example you just shared.
I couldn't believe it. And I was
Yeah.
looking at it, and I was baking cookies to take for Valentine's Day to school. And I was looking at the scene. I was like, what happened here? What is happening? And I kind of dreamed about it and thought, like, could it be peaceful? And then I was like, ow, I wonder if this is the result of what we let go of in this session. So perhaps now diving into what actually happened, because I'm sure the listener like, okay, what's the miracle that happened? And I need to know now because I need instant gratification. But also before we do, you gave me such a great definition. What is embodiment? And then also what is somatics? So there, and then please dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were talking about embodiment, I think I had said something about I was inviting you to embody that change, like embody what was unfolding for you. For me, embodiment is something we work towards. It's not something that happens in the moment. It is literally when it becomes a way of being. So embodiment is something that it's a big buzzword as well. It's used a lot, and it's really meant to, the way I define it and use it anyways, it's like the more that we practice this work, the more embodied it becomes. So it's like, we don't think about breathing. We're breathing. It's an embodied practice, right? It also keeps us alive. It's probably a little bit more technical, but there are certain things we do, like, that's a good example. I think for me, like using these practices on a regular basis. So I do breathwork practice. I do a few other things. I'll walk through some of the practices that are really helpful and that actually don't take a lot of time. But there's certain things that I will just do throughout my day. They become part of my daily routine to help me feel embodied, to help me feel like, okay, I am dropping in. I am aware of what's happening in my nervous system. I am moving consciously towards regulation. And the more you do anything, it just becomes like, it's like muscle memory, right? That to me is what the embodiment of it is. Yeah. And the other piece you wanted to have the answer is around somatics. Somatics is what I use in my coaching practice. So that is what we went through yesterday in our session together. Is that initially I will ask a client, what's presenting for them, what's bothering them. We'll get to something around consciously. They're going to say, well, I feel like I have a block in this area that's holding me back. And so we may do some work to go a little deeper with that to see if there is something else underneath that, because there's often layers with blocks. There's layers with fear. There's always going to be more than one. We try to do is come to the root as best we can so that, everything that's lying on top of that can also filter out once we address the root cause of what's going on. So we look at what is that block. We do some work mentally to prepare. And I personally, because I am an analytical person, I'm highly strategic as well. And I stay in my head a lot. I need some brain candy. I need my brain to understand it. So I still am trying to balance both of those things. But the somatic part is, okay, let's take it out of our brain and move into the body. So what I would ask, and I believe what I asked you, Elmira, was, where are you feeling that block? How is it showing up in your body? So it may show up in a particular area. It may show up as a tension, a sensation, a heat, a tingling. It could be anything. And what I love about somatics for me is that I don't have to understand it intellectually. It's not going to make logical sense. So for my brain to be able to like latch onto that, to be like, you don't need to know. It's like, oh, I have permission to like hands off and let the body do its thing. And that to me was, I think, one of the biggest breakthroughs for myself personally, so that I didn't latch on and cling to it from that intellectual point of view. Because when we stay up here, again, we're not moving anything, right? We're just staying up here, disconnected from our body. So I will ask my clients, like, where do you feel that? What is that coming up as? We may even talk about it as like, do you see a color? If it was a shape, what would the shape be? And all of that is to help us get out of our head and to get into the body, into this sensation, because it's going to show up differently for everyone. So I have some people who have a very clear visual representation that comes up. Other people are like, I don't see anything, but I feel a certain sensation. And it's like, great, just tune into that. You don't need to make it different. You don't need to judge it. It is just becoming aware. It's noticing how it's showing up. And what's interesting about this work is the more you do it, then we start to recognize when our body has that same sensation. So our mind might not be clued in that this is feeling like a threat to us, or this is feeling uncomfortable, but your body will start to become an anchor for you. Like, oh yeah, there's that thing again. Okay, I need to slow down for a minute and I need to center into that and feel into it.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to explain it is by welcoming the sensation and being with that sensation. And when you had your shoulders up yesterday, it was like, okay, can you allow it to be there for a moment? Can you allow that tension to be there? Can you breathe into the tension without needing to change it? And when you did that, Elmira, that's when you naturally, your shoulders relaxed.
Yeah.
Right? Most of the time, we're trying to move past it or we're resisting it.
Mm-hmm.
So the somatic work for me is about listening to the body, coming into the body's intelligence, and just noticing what it is without it needing to change.
Yes.
Because the moment we welcome that energy or that sensation and you breathe into it, give it 90 seconds or a little bit of extra time, notice what happens. It often will just dissipate. Right.
Yep.
So it's going to change. And then usually the goal is, okay, do I feel lighter? Yeah. Do I feel calmer? I do. Right. Those are clues that your system has moved into nervous system regulation. So you're moving either in that direction or you're there. And it's not, I wanted to come back to the nervous system for a moment too, because nervous system regulation, yes, we're hearing it everywhere. It's a very buzzy thing right now. It's not a state we get to and stay in. It's not like, woohoo, I'm here and I'm great, I'm fixed, right? No, we're constantly on this fluid continuum between dysregulation and regulation. And the goal is to have an adaptable and a flexible nervous system so we can continue to move back and forth.
Yeah.
We could have something that we could get a phone call right now, you or I, and be in dysregulation really quickly because it's either interrupting or it makes us uncomfortable, or like somebody's calling because they need us, or your son needs you, right? Instant dysregulation. But when we have an adaptable nervous system, we know what practices to put in place to bring us into our center or to bring us closer to regulation.
Yeah.
And regulation is all about being more adaptive, more agile, more resilient. So I wanted to make sure I said that before I forgot as well.
Love that. And I think we also have this perception that resilience is meant to be strong like a tree, like an oak tree. But we forget that the oak tree has leaves, which sways. And do the leaves, well, obviously, unless it's fall or winter, but theoretically, the leaves don't break. When the leaf falls, it's still in its whole leaf, but a tree could crack and fall down. And so the concept of being strong, it's not about being rigid. It's actually that there's a softness or being able to meet ourselves. And somebody had said to me a couple of weeks ago that soft things don't break. And I was just, that's amazing. Because again, I think society teaches about resilience, but I think to a certain degree, we take that to be rigid within ourselves for safety, but we're actually suppressing all of the emotions. And there's so much that we're stuffing down or just holding on to, kind of, gripping that roller coaster handle as we roller coaster our way through life. And then actually there is no roller coaster. When you include the body, there's soft landings or there's no other shoe to drop. Perhaps it's a pillow dropping. And I think it's just also about these euphemisms that we have for life that we've made up these harsh, the other shoe is dropping. I'm running out of money. If your words create your life, it's so harsh. And we're defining its harshness that's especially from our mouths and our heads, like neck up. But if 80% of our messages come from our body into our brain, what is the softness there? What is the texture? Where is it that you're meeting yourself that's so much softer? And then also, this one thing I've loved, you could obviously tell, I'm so curious and I'm not even lifelong learning, I'm like day-long learning every day. But it was saying that the nervous system regulation is actually when the nervous system feels alive. You're not necessarily coming to calm, you're coming, the point is alive. And I think another point that I was listening to another podcast the other day, and it was actually stress is not a bad thing because comfort is where the growth and the learning happens, but it's about recognizing that it's not like crazy stress. Dysregulation is okay because that's when the growth comes in. And I think we're all chasing calm now because again, our concept of a nervous system is meant to be calm and everything, but no, hold on, we actually go through dysregulation. So there's always so much to learn. But
Yes, true.
it's growing experience. And as you say, it's flexibility, adaptability. And I think those are some of the concepts that have been missed as we talk about regulating the nervous system.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because, yeah, calm is not necessarily our goal. It may be. Like for me, when I was going through what I was with my health, calm was absolutely the goal for some time. And then I went back into the workforce and it was like, no, I want to go again, right? I want to be healthy and adaptive, right, to all of the things coming at me. But what's interesting about the nervous system is if we don't have an understanding of it, it will absolutely sabotage us. And because it's trying to protect us from anything outside of our comfort zone. So its job is to protect, right? So if it perceives a threat, which could be excitement, which could be a new job, which could be a new relationship, those are good things, right? It could also be, not so good things, right? The nervous system doesn't necessarily know the difference between that. So we need to work with our nervous system. It's a bit of a dance we do together to unpack some of those things and just sit with the nervous system a bit like that's not a threat, right? And the parts of ourselves that think it's a threat, and this was a piece we worked on as well through the breakthrough session, it's let's call out the part that feels like this is a threat for me to grow or expand or to get that, hit the $1 million mark, whatever it may be. It's like, okay, let's talk with that part. Let's sit with that part. Let's have a conversation. Same as I invited you to be with the sensation in your body. And there's a caveat there. I would never do somatic work with anyone who is in big T trauma. So if there is a trauma that is still acute for someone, I would absolutely recommend they work with a therapist first and that they don't do any somatic work. Because the last thing you want to do is get them back in their body if the trauma is associated with their body. So that's my number one caveat there. However, most of us have experienced little T trauma, right? And we've worked through things. So we're at a place, especially if I'm working with a leader, for instance, they're coming in and it's directed around their life or their work. If we're not dealing with trauma, it's just so important to start building that relationship with your parts as well, because your parts, if you breathe into what they're trying to tell you and welcome that feedback, for instance, if you have a protector part that's like, I am afraid, right, to step outside of my comfort zone here. It does not feel safe for me to make more money in this job. Yet you came in to coaching because you're like, I want that promotion or I want to make more money in my business. And for some reason, I keep hitting a wall. Let's work with those parts the same way we work somatically. So we can call it somatic parts work, but you're inviting it to have a conversation with you. You're inviting it to share what it's been. Let's say we just haven't heard, we haven't had capacity to hear it. We haven't learned how to understand our parts and that they're all trying to serve us in some way, just like our nervous system is. And when you understand, like, okay, so there's a part of me that is protecting me because it doesn't feel safe, allow it to voice that, welcome that energy in, then it doesn't need to protect you anymore, right? You can thank it and let it like, yeah, you're off the hook. Like, we're okay here. I've got this.
Yes.
And that may sound really simplified, but that literally is the process.
Yes.
And the more that we do that work, the more we can really allow ourselves to expand without that nervous system contraction constantly happening. It will still contract, but it's not going to keep us stuck in freeze, right? Or fight or flight. It's going to be like, okay, we're able to carry this stress, right? This is a good stress. We want this, and we're flexible and adaptable to move forward, and we understand what's happening. So we're kind of like all working in alignment instead of one part of us pulling in that direction and another part of us pulling us in another direction where you've got competing priorities happening internally that you may not be consciously aware of.
Oh my gosh.
That's what sabotages us.
I love it. As you say that, it reminds me about the inner child healing that came up yesterday. You're talking about the parts that it's like, as much as I want to, I'm going to use money as an example because it's just a big one we talk about in our capacity for expansion. And so you're talking about money and obviously the set point within our body. But when the inner child is there, is my inner child is just longing for acceptance, belonging, and because there's loneliness there from bullying and ostracization as a child.
Yeah.
Anything, no matter anything aside from what the child at a 6-year-old level understands, it's all going to be a threat, everything, because there's always the threat of not belonging. There's always the threat of expansion, creating loneliness. Like there's so much fear, which is natural because a child just wants to belong and wants predictability
Sure.
and consistency. So now when you're starting to step out of these comfort zones, even though the thing you're moving to is great, a 6-year-old simply cannot understand because the 6-year-old's desire, that part is simply for acceptance, love, friendship. And anything that would threaten those is just like, no. So this part, this child is saying no, whereas the adult is, baby, I want to fly first class and I want to fly with champagne and do everything. It is that child is just, it's funny. It just came up for me right now. It says, this child is not saying no. This child is saying, I don't understand. So
That's
just
right.
explain it to me or get into the body. And frankly, and also the child is saying, this is too much for me to handle. But somehow the inner child is just like, they're the ones who are still in charge and just saying, I don't understand how this could happen, or I just want to play. And I think especially for me as a projector, we actually resource our bodies and our energy through being in nature and through playing, which is something my brain is having a very hard time getting itself around because I don't understand how me touching a tree or putting my feet in the ground is going to make me money or playing, right? So it's the deconditioning, but I'm still like, this is insane. And I think that's partially been, it's coming up, that's partially been is some of my stuff is that actually my adult conditioned self just simply does not understand how this is even possible. So it's digging its heels in. But I mean, that's
right.
the patriarchy. So there's all these parts. They're like, I know exactly what I desire. I know exactly what I want. But these two parts are just like, nope, can't have it. Don't understand it. I just want to belong. And when you can just acknowledge, because everybody just wants to be acknowledged. And they just want to say what they have to say. And also, yesterday, it was like the inner child just wanted to say something and then she ran off and went to play. And that's all she wants to do is just the acknowledgement and to be heard and listened, which is honestly what we all want.
Witnessing is really powerful. And again, I think with somatic work and parts work sometimes too, like I know people can say, well, this just sounds so simple. It sounds simple. However, when you are trying to put it into practice, it's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
We may not have had a relationship with our inner child or that part of us, right? Since we were 6 years old, and it can feel really uncomfortable to go there, especially when somebody is holding you in that space. For instance, if I am your coach and I'm inviting you to have a conversation with that part of yourself who doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard, is totally overwhelmed, it can feel really uncomfortable to be like, she wants me to have a conversation with myself.
Totally.
And I've been there too. And so it's not always easy. I think it's something that we practice and we come back to. Just like I think we were saying off the top, or even before we were recording, it's like yoga, right? We go back to the mat. You go back to the practice every day. Some days it can feel easier than other days. And I think it's really important too that we understand with the nervous system, as we are moving outside of our comfort zone, we want to be insourcing as much safety as possible to be able to do this work and to be able to continue to expand to meet our growth edge. So what I mean by insourcing safety is I come from a world of facilitation where we talk about this is a safe space for you to come, and especially in corporate, right? This is a safe space. We're creating a safe container so you can talk about whatever you need to. And people are like, this is not an effing safe space, right? We're at work and anything I say can be held against me, right? So we work really hard as facilitators to create a safe space, but the reality is safety is highly subjective. So what is safe for me, Elmira, may be totally different for you. I can't know what your safety cues are. So what I recommend with my clients is that they work on insourcing safety. And so what I mean by that is really starting to look at what is it that helps to relax you, what helps you to move into nervous system regulation. And we can talk about specific practices shortly here as well. But what are the things that make you feel like in this moment, you're okay? So that could be something as simple as like where I'm sitting in my office, I might look up at a painting in front of me and I might look at the detail because that brings me into the moment. Because I know in this moment, I'm safe. I'm good. I may look around the room. I may put my feet down because I usually have my legs crossed in my chair. It's just how I sit. I put my feet down and ground right? I may even lie down on the floor because
Yeah.
for me, Shavasana, corpse pose is like, that's where I need to be some days, right? Just to like, okay, have a full exhale. And it could be things like actual just touch, giving yourself a physical hug sometimes. It's really about coming into the moment. And there are so many different ways to in-source safety. But what I would recommend is that you start to look at what are the things that support you and making sure that you are doing that and keeping that as part of your practice when you are moving through a growth edge. So when you are in a phase of expansion in your life, personally, professionally, whatever it is, we want to be insourcing safety because otherwise the nervous system is going to see that as a threat and it's going to do its job and try to get rigid and protect you, right?
And I think there's that
Yeah.
developing a friendship with the nervous system and with the protector.
Yeah.
There is that book which is all about the saboteurs. And our judge is so in charge, or the saboteur is in charge because they're trying to protect. And I think it's developing the friendship with the
Yeah.
ego. And I don't say ego anymore, I say protector. So thank you so much for protecting, being able to have that ease with that conversation. Because even as much as we say, I've never had that much money, or I've never had as much money as I wanted to. Well, it's actually just keeping you on autopilot with all it knows. And it's kept you safe. And, I live in a beautiful home and I have food in my belly. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
thank you for protecting me, and it's safe for you. And oftentimes when I've just sat with my protector, it's actually like heaving, like after a marathon, like, and when I see that, it's just like, oh my gosh, I've been trying so hard. And I'm like, dude, just calm down, I got this. And being able to have those conversations with the parts of ourselves and with our body, but also to develop that friendship, because it's not just about an acknowledgement, there's an acknowledgement of the good that they have done. And I think it also comes down to just recognizing ourselves, especially as women. We're not good at recognizing ourselves. We're not good at seeing how good we've done. And we're not good at receiving. We're not good at receiving compliments. And I think that also goes down so much to it, is being able to be friends with ourselves and seeing all the good that we do. And you start to fill up your own cup. You're starting to pour into yourself. Or yesterday when we did our session, it just opened up my third eye and this whole connection with the spirit world, where, like I was saying, is that there was almost like, it was like a milkshake coming from heaven with a straw going into my mouth, and this milkshake of light was going into my body, and developing internal safety, but also internal resource nest, or that connection where the source of joy is from ourselves, but it's also from divine. And so mine was a very spiritual experience as well, not just healing. It reconnected me to source.
Thank you for sharing that as well. I think everyone is a little bit different, but this work for me as well has actually been quite spiritual. And my healing was also quite spiritual in nature. And when I really started to understand the nervous system too, as we move into that place of regulation, as we accept all of who we are, all of the parts, as we understand this relationship we have, it opens us more fully to our deeper wisdom and our intuition.
Yeah.
And so if I honestly, I'm a big believer, like for me, it's all about the alchemy between the leadership we bring and our intuition. It's that intersection, right? Where our wisdom and our leadership connect. For me, that is where our leadership potential resides. And that is that's the magic. That's the alchemy we bring into the world that nobody else does. It's our unique blueprint. And so if you are curious about moving more fully into your intuition and developing a deeper relationship with that wisdom, it is through the nervous system. It is through these practices. It is through doing somatic work and allowing yourself to really feel the difference of being in that dysregulated, for me, I'll say that hustle, that urgency energy. We cannot tap into our intuition when we're stuck there. So as we learn, right, to really regulate and to move into, again, not necessarily a calm state for nervous system regulation, but it's like as we learn to become more adaptable. And I think as we have more time and space, doesn't take very long, but we do need some time in stillness. And your nervous system does need to be on that a little closer to regulation than dysregulation, on that continuum, right? To actually be in stillness and not feel terribly uncomfortable, because it can be when you're used to moving so quickly and
Yes.
always being on the go. It can be very difficult to sit still. It can be difficult to be out in nature without like an audio book or a podcast in your ear.
Yes.
The goal, right, is to like just be wherever you are, to be in that stillness, and then open yourself up to receiving your intuition. And the fun fact about the intuition is your intuition, like one part of it is receiving it. The other part, if you want to build that intuitive muscle, is you need to act on it.
Yes.
So as things are dropping in, if you want your intuition to get stronger, it's about acting on that wisdom as well, and then seeing how that shifts things in your life.
Yes.
And that's a fun place to be as well.
I know, I think once, and it was saying, especially for projectors, the splenic authority projectors, is when you're driving, just let your splenic authority take the lead. And so which way are we going to go? And I've ended up on beautiful drives, and that was actually recommended as the number one way to let go of control. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another piece is that we always want control of our lives. Right. And we are micromanaging the universe, and nervous system is on from a rigid perspective. It's white knuckling it. And again, it's a fine, thank you, protective piece of our system, but it's not going to allow us to thrive or to blossom. And it's just, and again, I think there's something, what is it? Personal development is like, change this or just change this. And there's so much about changing, but what about honoring our nervous system and where we got it to? Yes. Just allowing it to, as you say, expand. It's an expansion practice. Mm-hmm. And it is just a blossoming. It is a growth. And even such simple things as having a coffee in the morning with a candle on. Those will be one of the simplest practices that I often do, especially because, I do school drop off and pick up and things like that. Yeah. But especially for mothers or busy women, is just have a coffee with a candle on. And that practice alone has changed so many people's lives, because there's that sense of lush and calm and just being able to tap into divine or intuition and starting to listen and to give our bodies what it is they desire, which is just a moment of peace.
It is. And it reminds me too of what you were sharing around how, as women in particular, we're not great at receiving. This is a practice in receiving. Yes. When you sit with your coffee in the morning and you have a candle to remind yourself, like, this is my sacred time. This is just for me. I get to receive right now, whatever that is, the benefits of being still for a few moments, the enjoyment of having that first cup of coffee, which I miss terribly because I don't drink coffee anymore. No. But I, like, just really enjoying the moment. Yes. And if your intuition does happen to leave you a little bit, right? If you check in and there's something there for you, that is a practice of receiving. And I do think there's real power in that, and not from a hierarchical, patriarchal power perspective. It's like, I think there's power in learning how to listen to ourselves and to trust that we know, to start inner sourcing our own wisdom, right? And then being able to act on that. That is something that nobody can take that away from you. And I think that if more of us were really anchored in that and had something in our lives that supported that practice, right? Maybe it becomes like a few minutes each day. And then for me, I've been meditating and doing devotional work probably now for close to 20 years every morning. And it's something that just gets stronger with time. And if I'm having a rough time, that's where I go. That is my space. That is where I will sit. I write, so I journal what comes through for me. I ask questions, but that is something we build up over time, just like you would a muscle in the gym with repetitive reps, right? Yeah. It's the same thing, but learning how to receive, I think, is really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that our generation and even our mothers and other generations, I feel like we were not taught, or we were robbed of being a woman. And there was, I follow Sarah Jenks on Instagram, and she talks so much about the erasure of the divine feminine and our power. And I just think it is, in a way, we've lost the ability to connect with ourselves, but also to ourselves as women, or to this extraordinary sisterhood of women in wisdom. When a woman goes into childbirth, she goes into community. And if a woman if her body and herself is in a coma, her body would actually know how to birth a child, which I think is extraordinary. Or women go into, the house to bleed altogether. And so there's an ancient wisdom, is my point, that we have been disconnected, that comes through community, through teaching, through listening to our own wisdom. And I feel like, one, we're coming back to understand the body's intelligence, which is something that you enlightened me on yesterday. But we're coming back to body wisdom, body intelligence, our own wisdom, and our power, but in a beautiful, gorgeous, enlightening, empowering way. That is just, it is just so beautiful, and it's just so lovely. And I think the gift that you, and the medicine that you are bringing to the world, is just extraordinary. And just you as a facilitator, to witness you yesterday I was in awe. You are so clearly doing what you need to do. But if you will say, I don't like using the term, but as a hard skill, you are amazing. So beautifully spoken, so extraordinarily knowledgeable. Your energy, just everything about the work that you are doing is literally the best that I'm saying. And I say this in order to promote your work so that everybody listening is booking in with Sonja. But it really is an extraordinary experience to be in her presence and in her guidance and medicine and wisdom.
Thank you so much, Elmira. I really appreciate that. I really do. I wanted to just tack on something to what you said about being in community and in the sisterhood, and how we've really lost that. One of the things that I found so interesting when I was learning about the nervous system is we regulate through co-regulation. We regulate with others. And so when you think about the people you surround yourself with, are they helping you to dysregulate and keeping you in that state? Or are they helping you to regulate and move into a state where you are more in tune with yourself? And so that's something just to think on, right, for yourself. But we are always co-regulating. And so whether we are at work or with our family or with friends, just start noticing too how you feel with certain groups, because community and connection are so vitally important for so many reasons, all the reasons that you've shared, but also for nervous system regulation as well.
And you just said another key word. I know you're full of all these amazing pearls of wisdom, but tuning in, because really, isn't that what this is all about? It's about attunement to ourselves. And I think as women, we've just been taught to tune into so many other people that we've done that to the detriment of our own selves. And I think as a human race, we haven't done that. So it's really a time of attunement, of tuning in to wisdom, to divine, to outside of 3D, but also to the extraordinary that lives within us that we are only just starting to remember now. And there's so much more.
There is so much more. And it's so true. I think, if we're not in tune with ourselves, then especially as leaders, I question, like, am I really leading based on what I think is best or right or in most congruent for me? Or am I allowing other people's expectations, conditioning, patriarchy, hierarchy, all of those things to effectively make those decisions for me? So from a leadership perspective, I think the attunement is even more important, because those who are in leadership, this is sort of my sweet spot, let's say, with the clients I work with, those who are in leadership who get this and who understand the nervous system, how it impacts them personally, so they can tune into themselves, but how co-regulation starts with them when they're the leader, right? In an organization, team, what have you, even family, network, whatever that looks like, community, we have a larger ripple effect when we're in a position of quote unquote power, right? When there's a differential in power, and we need to be able to bring our regulated nervous system to what we do, so that not only are we really in tune with what's ours and what's not ours, but we can also tune into the needs of the people that we're responsible for as well. And I think right now, I live in the United States, that is even more important. We need more leaders to show up. And this is the work. This is the way we do it. We need to work with our nervous system. We need to come into this place of less about me, the person, and my ego, right? And understand how to unhook from that, and back to your own words, like that's a part of us, right? It's a part of us that's trying to serve us, but is it serving us in the best possible way? Not always. Right? So connecting with those parts and then moving beyond them. So when we do our work and we clear that path, we become more in tune with ourselves and our intuition and what we feel is needed in our workplace, in our life, with the decision we need to make about something today or tomorrow, right? We just become way more in tune with that and more confident in those decisions.
God, I love this all so much. As we wrap, is there anything else you wanted to add?
So I do. I want to add just some really practical tools to
Right.
support
Amazing.
nervous system regulation. So we talked about somatics and how I use that in my coaching practice. And if anyone has questions, please reach out. I'm happy to answer them. But I think nervous system regulation, again, as you said at the beginning, it's such a buzzy term. What do we do? And some of the things are really small and they seem really simple. And like you were saying, they're not always easy. You go out in nature and it's like, why? What am I doing this for? So I want to just make sure that foundationally we start there. And this is the basics, right? We do need adequate sleep. We need to hydrate. And I can tell you, my family, if they hear me say hydrate one more time, they're going to roll their eyes because I'm always checking. Are we drinking enough? Are we getting enough electrolytes? All the things. But our the bare bones foundational things need to be in place in order for us to regulate our nervous system. So nutrition, all of those things have to be there. And then we get to move into things like breath work. So you don't have to do fancy breath work. I do some fancy breath work because I have been doing breath work for a couple of years now, and I found some things that really help me to meet my growth edge and to clear out, almost like clear out the pond scum on top of the water, right? So breath work can be as simple as just sitting down, noticing your breath first and foremost, especially if this is something new for you. And then my recommendation is to start slow, just breathing in through the nose for 4 counts, and then allowing it to come out as a sigh with some sound from your mouth for 6 counts. So your exhalation, you want a little bit longer because that's just going to support your nervous system to come into more regulation. You could start with 3 counts in and 5 counts out, but the goal is to have your exhalation just a little bit longer. Those things are very easy. You can do them anywhere, and I will do them in the car. There's numerous breathwork styles that you can try, but I would say start by slowing down, noticing your breath, breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth with some sound. A sigh is really cathartic. Just, right? Let it out.
Yep.
Let it out. So it's also a discharging practice. Things like horsey lips, which now I do religiously every morning when I walk my dog. I will walk in the woods and I'll be like, take a deep breath in. And it's the silliest thing to do. And if you have kids, they're going to love it. They may already do it. Kids discharge very naturally, right? So that type of practice, doing that a few times, you're discharging the stress load that is on your system because it's always accumulating. So we need ways to discharge it out of our system. Just like our kids do, my dog shakes all the time. Shaking is really helpful, right? So you can sit at your desk and just shake it out. You can stand up and shake. You can do heel rocks. It doesn't have to be fast. It's really, again, tuning into your body, noticing how it feels before and after and seeing what works for you. Shaking. Movement is the other one. Movement can be dancing. It can be walking. It can be anything that makes you feel better. But I think it's more too about tuning into what does your body want to do. So allowing your body to move in a way that maybe your mind's like, well, why would I do that? Who knows? But your body wants to move there. So put on some music and allow your body to move. When you're spending time in nature, again, try not to be doing 12 other things while you're in nature. Just notice. Just notice what's around you. Notice the sounds, the smell, right? What it feels like to be out there, the colors, noticing. And then humming, singing can help. It's really helpful vagal toning. Playing. And this is the one I know, Almira, you were like, hold on, I know I'm supposed to do this, but it's weird. It doesn't feel right. Playing with your kids, play with an animal, play. Allow yourself to have just some silly playtime, and you don't need to do it around anyone else, but it is easier if you have a kid or a dog. My dog is ridiculous, so we have lots of playtime. But those types of things sound really small. I think the discipline is first trying them. And then seeing how you feel before and after them. And then let that be your guide.
It's funny.
That's what I wanted to make sure I could put up.
Love it. Yes. And it's such basic things, but it really is the truth.
It is.
And it's just bringing our bodies back to that regulation, coming back into the body, into ourselves. And it's amazing the work that these very, very simple things do. It really is extraordinary.
I think for those of us who struggle against the simplicity of some of these things, is this a reminder that this is productive. These sort of easy, lighthearted things that I've just sort of gone through, it's productive. It is supporting your nervous system, and it's totally worth it. But don't take my word for it. Try it and then see how it goes.
And it also brings you into the present, into your body, into the present,
Yep.
into safety.
Exactly.
It's so many functions to do that. But again, also to the present, because otherwise we're thinking about something in the past, or we're future tripping and freaking out. And it is all about being present. And that's when we're in our bodies and in our energy. And in fact, time doesn't exist. Time is just man-made. The universe, literally, it's the ever-present moment. The universe has no idea about the future or the past. And your body and your brain, if you're thinking about the past, you're in the past. And so coming into the present for our ability to create our lives, it is crucial. And that's why nervous system regulation is so crucial, because you can create and have fun and do everything that you've ever wanted to.
Yeah. Just one step at a time.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you have so much expertise. And, I, just as we'd said at the beginning of this podcast episode, I myself have done a breakthrough session with Sonja, and it was extraordinary. So I highly, highly recommend that you check out Sonja and check out her work. Do your own expansion practice, if you will, meaning do it daily. Don't think of it as another thing on your list, because it's something that you can do while driving. Not while driving, while listening to a podcast. That is too much multitasking. Let's be clear. I've even stopped listening to a podcast as I drive, because I just want to enjoy nature. But as you are doing a one thing, perhaps like driving or being in the shower, there you can add in another practice, or just get very in your body and feel the water dropping onto your body and getting into those sensations. But otherwise, they're very simple practices. But what you are able to then alchemize is extraordinary. And you will meet yourself at a whole different level.
Well said. Thank you, Almira.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
For me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Powerful Podcast. I've so enjoyed sharing all of my insights, all my mistakes, all of my learnings as I grew and scaled my business from 6 to 7 figures. If you enjoyed this, please leave us a review, and then I'll send you back my top 3 ways to make $10,000. And I tell you, they're super easy, super creative, and super easy for you to implement. So please drop us the review, send it over, and we will send you back with my top 3 ways to make $10,000.